Will you look at that? A separatist ship. Haven't seen a Luke or Hulk in ages.
Yeah. Ages.
Breaking her will be big money. All right, let's go.
Okay, so let me put it this way. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a very imperfect game, and if you wanted to sit there and disassemble all of its components and set each of them down side by side, you could very easily put forward a strong and convincing case that this is just a pretty average action-adventure game. But taken together, all of the characters and the story and the world and the exploration and the lore and the set pieces and the action and the rich, thoroughbred Star Wars energy just coursing through this thing, when you put all of that stuff together, you cannot but think, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. This is the best Star Wars fix I've had since, I honestly can't remember when. Like, it's hard to remember a time when it was so easy to love something Star Wars. But like, true believers, this is it. I absolutely loved this game, and in this review, I'm gonna tell you why. Okay, so can I just start by saying this? We live in divided times, and no more is that evident than when it comes to Star Wars. Now, I don't want to get into what everyone thinks about the new trilogy or whatever, that's your business, but one thing I think we can all agree on is that no one agrees about the new trilogy, or the offshoot movies, or the expanded universe, or anything else when it comes to Star Wars. Except maybe Baby Yoda. Everyone seems to be pretty on board with him. To be honest, Jedi Fallen Order actually, means something to me as a Star Wars fan, because it's the first time in a long, long time when I could just walk away from something Star Wars related and just close my eyes and nod my head and think to myself, yes, that's Star Wars. You guys get it. You did it. Thank you. And given that this is the franchise among all other franchises that defined my childhood and teenage years, that's a really, really special feeling. It's this feeling more than anything else that defines Jedi Fallen Order. Structurally and mechanically, Fallen Order is never as strong as the games that inspires it. Its world exploration, traversal, and puzzles never feel quite as fully realized as they do in, say, Uncharted. The new abilities you gain access to never feel quite as impactful as they do in a multitude of other Metroidvanias. And Fallen Order's Sekiro-like combat does not hold a candle to Sekiro, and can even be described as bad depending on how much of a melee action purist you are. But straddling all of this is Star Wars, and every inch of this game is thick with the most perfectly realized version a fan could hope for. It comes through Cal, the down on his luck but never undeterred hero. It comes through the lovable, deep, and engaging crew members that accompany him. It comes through the incredible locations you visit and the supporting cast you bump into. It's present in the stone monuments that tower above you, the deepest tombs you explore, the gladiatorial combat you find yourself in, and the set pieces that hold you transfixed until they're done with you. You could take the Star Wars label off this thing and everyone would still know it's Star Wars, because it just nails that feeling in a way that Star Wars itself has struggled to do for a very, very long time now. Jedi Fallen Order tells the story of Cal Kestis. Hiding away in a scrapper's yard, Cal's force sensitivity is revealed to us in some of the first moments of the game.
Cal! I can't climb up!
Bro! Just hang on!
And send me!
No, don't let go!
I can't hold on!
Bro! No! You okay, bro?
I'm alright!
From then on, Cal is thrust into an epic fight for survival as he outruns the Empire hot at his heels while trying to build a future for the Jedi Order. Certainly one of Respawn's smartest moves here was to set this game in the post-Order 66 era, where Jedi are being hunted to extinction. The movies paint a picture of a sudden eradication of the Jedi, but there were a few Jedi who remained and fought on to survive. Fallen Order is one of those stories, and it's an engaging one because, like the original trilogy, it's one of rebellion. Luke, Han, and Leia were all fighting to keep the rebellion alive, just as Cal, Seer, and Grease are trying to keep the Jedi alive. And that's some pretty meaty flesh for any Star Wars fan to sink their teeth into. And yeah, that one sequence, the flashback with the kid, you know the one, if you've played the game, holy shit, that was some amazing Star Wars. The other reason I think this whole package is so irresistible to a Star Wars fan is that it tells what is essentially an Old Republic story about the ancient Jedi Order. And this is where the Star Wars games have always found their best success. The movies never delved deep into the idea of Jedis as an ancient order of knights, with stone-hewn temples and rituals and esoteric space magic. By the time we come to it in the prequel trilogy, the Force is already sort of corporatized. It's managed by a council from up on high in a big city that looks like an Amazon delivery depot. The Jedi are old, ancient, earthen, spiritual, primal, like the swamps of Dagobah. Jedi Fallen Order connects us to this feeling and allows us to explore it. Much of this comes through the environments. The environment artists at Respawn did an absolutely superb job in designing these spaces. Most planets house a Jedi temple for you to explore, and each one is its own mountain looming large over the landscape. Inside and out, these spaces all possess such a weathered, lived-in quality that tells the story of their antiquity. You can see it in the texture of the rock, or the shine of the brass, or the way they're lit, or just the sheer size of them. You feel like such a tiny, insignificant speck within these spaces, reminding you how small you are compared to the thousands of years of history and tradition that you now toil in service to. You will tread in the footsteps of your forebears and learn from them. You will visit the places where the Jedi Order began. You will visit the planet where lightsaber crystals are obtained, and in doing all of this, you'll seek to become a Jedi Knight yourself. Even if this game sucked, it would be worth playing for these moments alone. But Fallen Order isn't relying on only the old world charm to carry it. It also knows how to fuse the more modern aspects of the Star Wars universe as well. The Empire are present, and the Imperial spaces provide such a striking contrast to the more organic spaces present throughout the rest of the game. The Empire-built architecture you'll explore has never looked better. I remember the first time I encountered it, and I was just like, wow. The metal textures combined with the lighting and the color scheme renders the most convincing Empire spaces you've ever seen, and I never cease to be impressed by them. It also provides really effective environmental pacing, as the game is able to pull you into such a wide variety of different spaces with such ease, such that you'll never really tire of one location. The absolute heart and soul of this game though is your crew. Sia is a former Jedi who has her own mysterious reasons for leaving that life behind, and as she guides you on your journey, you'll uncover pieces of her story. Grease, God, I love this guy. I just love his character model, first of all. It's just great, and the voice actor's delivery is just so spot on. His jokes don't really land as well as I'm sure the writers would have liked, but he makes up for it with so much heart at pivotal moments. Oh, and there's another crew member who joins later, but I won't spoil that, and they are the best! Like, I love this person, and I just want to see more of this person in absolutely everything. Oh, and BD1. He's cute, he's like a puppy, we love him. The crew is so important in Fallen Order because I think it's almost cathartic. Like, the new trilogy doesn't really have a crew. It has a whole bunch of people who met a few times, I think, maybe, but they aren't linked in any real way. Like, there's no familial bonds, they don't spend a lot of time on screen together. It's just not the same. Fallen Order gives us the Star Wars family that the new trilogy never did. The takeaway from all of this is that the new trilogy is garbage. Wait, that's not the line. The takeaway from all of this is that if you're a Star Wars fan, Fallen Order is unmissable. The minor plot issues that hamper this game's pacing can't take away from how Star Warsy this Star Wars adventure is. It's so good, in fact, that it helps you forget that Fallen Order actually has a lot of issues as a game. There's really 4 components to Fallen Order. There's exploration and traversal, action set pieces, Metroidvania, and combat. So let's take a look at each of them now. Many people are comparing Fallen Order to Uncharted, and I think that's a pretty fair comparison. If you were to ask me which game Fallen Order was closest to, I'd probably say Soul Reaver. Raziel has a lightsaber after all, but Uncharted works too. There's a lot of climbing, a lot of swinging, a lot of jumping, and a lot of swimming. You're doing all of this inside ancient tombs overgrown with vines, each housing some sort of secret for you to find and spirit away, so yes, if it's not Indiana Jones, it's Uncharted. Respawn are getting a lot of praise for really nailing this exploration and traversal formula, despite the fact that this is their first game of this type. But might I remind you that this is not Respawn's first rodeo when it comes to movement and traversal mechanics. Apex Legends is a battle royale game that is almost defined by its sense of flow, with your ability to slide down mountains or zip lines or launch yourself across the map. Before this, Titanfall set the standard when it comes to movement mechanics in first-person shooters, with some truly dizzying displays of skill possible for those that knew what they were doing, and some very smart puzzle design in Titanfall 2's single-player campaign. In a weird way, movement and traversal in Fallen Order never feels quite as good as it probably should, given how experienced Respawn are on this front. Cal's movement animations are sort of clunky and delayed, his jump doesn't really pop as much as it should, wall running feels really limited, swinging feels really slow. When you land, you don't maintain any of your momentum, so you constantly need to reactivate sprint to keep Cal moving. I think the best way to summarize it would be to say that Titanfall's pilots feel more like Jedis than Cal does. When it comes to movement, there's not a lot that Cal can do that Nathan Drake can't, and Cal's a Jedi. It would have been interesting to see how much further Respawn could have pushed the Uncharted formula by embracing a more ambitious movement and traversal system, but it looks like we'll have to wait for a future game for that. I guess this leads into the Metroidvania discussion. Yes, Cal will unlock new abilities through his playthrough, courtesy of flashbacks to training sessions with your former master, and these abilities will make new areas of the map accessible. It's certainly satisfying to see a red door on your map suddenly turn green when you unlock the required power. This is one of the core appeals of the entire Metroidvania shtick. But there's two types of Metroidvania powers. There are those that operate like keys, simply making an area accessible that wasn't before, and then there's powers that facilitate more player expression and experimentation. If you haven't, go and play Guacamelee on whatever system you can. This is honestly one of the best Metroidvanias ever made because each of the new abilities you gain access to can be combined with others, and the level design pushes the player to the absolute limit in putting all of these together. You have to master Guacamelee's abilities and movesets to get the most out of the game, where no such mastery is even possible in Fallen Order because the level design never fully evolves to make use of them. You can pull things towards you now, so you can now finally cross that gap. Fine, but the levels never offer you more advanced traversal challenges that allow you to string together everything you've learned and accomplish something really satisfying. There's also a discussion to be had about the general bugginess when traversing these spaces. I had a lot of instances where Cal wouldn't latch onto something, or he'd just fall off the edge for no reason, or some sort of camera glitch would make my job 10 times harder than it needed to be. It definitely won't spoil your adventure, but there will definitely be more than a few occasions where you'll just have to call bullshit on whatever just went down on screen. These complaints about Cal's movesets or limited level design or bugs, they're all pretty minor to be honest. At the end of the day, it's just really fun to explore space in this game. As I've said, you can break down its pieces and critique them, but when you put them all together, it's just enjoyable to see a spot in the distance and slowly make your way there, solving puzzles both big and small as you go. You might tire of the equation after the first 5 or 6 hours because the formula doesn't really evolve much beyond that, and the levels start to feel a little bit samey, but if this formula appeals to you, then its more limited scope and its technical issues are not going to hold you back from enjoying yourself. And besides, if you stick with it, you get moments like these.
You shot the coupling out. Gotta get down. Ah! Ah! No, no, no! Ah!
There's about a dozen of these set-piece moments littered throughout the game, and they're just so fantastic. Just as much as Star Wars is about ancient orders, or the evil empire, or the crew by your side, it's also about adventure. Just moments of unrestrained adventure. And Fallen Order is chock full of this stuff. I mean, look at this, you're climbing aboard a vine-covered AT-AT as they slowly make their way towards a rebel base, and then you commandeer one and drive it for yourself before Forrest Whitaker rocks up and he's all like, hey bro, I'm sorry, but this is just too fucking cool. Okay, so, smash cut, I've put it off long enough, I think it's time now to talk about combat in Jedi Fallen Order. Okay, so the best way I can say this, and it's harsh, but it's true, but the best way I can describe combat in Jedi Fallen Order is if Sekiro sucked, right? Okay, so let me unpack that. Let's look first at Cal. Cal has a lightsaber, which later on becomes a double lightsaber that functions largely the same way. You can do both light and heavy attacks, and repeated button presses will put you into a sort of combo. There's a skill tree that opens up over time, allowing you to learn more advanced moves like new combos or lightsaber throws or whatever. There are two major issues with combat in Fallen Order. The first is that it's what I call animation-led melee combat. This is a combat model where the animation is far more important than things like positions or hitboxes or enemy reaction. When you swing a lightsaber in the game, what matters most is that the animation happens, which means that the game will take its time to wind it up and conclude it regardless of whatever else is going on. This results in Cal feeling quite imprecise as you control him. He sort of feels like he's just flailing around wildly rather than striking at the enemy with clear intent. It means his lightsaber doesn't snap back to position when it's blocked, creating a moment when it feels like the controls have just become unresponsive. This is really important because of the second major issue in Fallen Order's combat, and that's the implementation of a poise meter. Almost all humanoid enemies have a poise meter, making it harder to damage them until it's broken. You break it by wearing it down through repeated attacks or by parrying enemy attacks, which removes huge chunks of it, really incentivizing you to play the parry game a la Sekiro. There's one critical difference between Sekiro and Fallen Order, however, and that's the way that the enemy's poise meter is refilled. The absolute genius of Sekiro is that it arrived at a combat model where aggression and skill were rewarded because you could suffocate the enemy with your rage. If you just stayed on them and attacked and parried absolutely everything, they never got the chance for that poise meter to refill, so you can just beat your opponent down with sheer will. In Fallen Order, an enemy's poise meter is refilled after you damage them once or twice. It just pops back up miraculously. This means that you can be in a full, messy combo beating down on your enemy after successfully breaking their poise, only to have that combo immediately halted by a block or a parry from an enemy that somehow recovered while you were wailing on them. This really sucks, to be honest. Not only does it make the game feel far less skill-oriented, but it also completely interrupts the momentum of every encounter. Combat, much like exploration, never really flows. It never asks you to chain together everything you've learned to accomplish some great feat of skill. It's always like this staggered, staccato sort of affair that's more frustrating than rewarding. This certainly isn't helped by a lack of enemy variety and boss encounters. The local fauna are a strange mix, and most of them are kind of annoying to fight for a variety of reasons, while the Empire troops all sort of feel the same no matter who you're going up against. Bosses are a complete cakewalk and really lack imagination in encounter mechanics. There's a lot more you can do with the creatures and the characters of the world of Star Wars that Respawn have not done here. But again, a lot of this is academic. If you want a brilliant third-person action melee game, go play Devil May Cry or Sekiro or Dark Souls or one of those. If you want to be a motherfucking Jedi, this will do the trick. I'll admit, I was definitely frustrated by Fallen Order's combat, but never so much so that I wanted to put down the controller and walk away. Not even once. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is developed by Respawn Entertainment of both Titanfall and Apex Legends fame, and I just want to congratulate them on this title. These guys are some fucking crazy talented developers. But even then, it's not easy to land anything in the Star Wars universe without it blowing up in your face. Some minor issues aside, these guys nailed it, so kudos to them. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the Titanfall 2 single-player campaign, go and play it. It's currently free for PS Plus members, and it's one of the best single-player shooter campaigns ever made. Secondly, this game is published by EA. Now, most of you will know my thoughts on EA, and they're just about the same as everyone else's thoughts on EA, but credit where it's due. EA let Respawn make a single-player Star Wars game with no multiplayer, no loot boxes, and no microtransactions. That's not exactly how EA rolls. In this way, Jedi Fallen Order represents a weird sort of like road to Damascus for EA, who only a few years ago commented that single-player games weren't in high demand in the market, and who cancelled Amy Hennig's Project Ragtag by asking, FIFA makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year through Ultimate Team. What's your version of that? Star Wars Battlefront 2 was a perfectly fine game ruined by its monetization, and EA has canned at least one other Star Wars game they were working on. It's encouraging then to learn that Jedi Fallen Order is selling through the roof. Hopefully it will serve as a reminder to EA that well-made, fairly monetized single-player games will never go out of style. But as great as this thing is for EA and for Respawn, I really just think it's great for Star Wars fans. Everyone is united on this thing. Everyone can feel that we finally got something uncomplicatedly great. And given how hard it is for Star Wars to unite fans these days, the legacy of Jedi Fallen Order is an important one.